Oh, coming to work at this hour? Anyone late for a business meeting is fired.
Chris, my boss, declared with a nasty grin as he shoved me hard just as I arrived at the office. Huh? What's going on, Chris?
The $2 million deal with Montgomery Trading should have started by now.
What is Chris talking about? As Chris proudly flaunted the documents, I calmly stated the facts. The deal was finished yesterday, remember? What? Chris's papers scattered all over the floor. My name is Alan Stone. I'm a 45-year-old office worker. I've been working as a sales representative at a food import and wholesale company for over 20 years now. Finding rare and delicious products to import and deliver to consumers is my job. And every day I enjoyed working at a place where I could enrich people's lives and bring smiles to customers' faces. I was eager to join the workforce early, so I started working right after high school, and I never regretted it. Most of my colleagues had college degrees, but once you're out in the real world, that doesn't matter. I was satisfied with a work environment where we could sometimes compete and other times collaborate, achieving results together, and I was fortunate to have great colleagues. That's why the arrival of the new department manager has been so confusing for me. The new sales manager, Chris, is an elite graduate from Harvard University. At 39, he's already a department manager, which means he's quite capable and has a promising future. All my previous supervisors were dedicated to their work and skillfully managed the department to prevent any conflicts among employees. Even if I made a mistake at work, they would help me find a solution and even put their own tasks aside to offer advice. So when the new manager was announced, we weren't worried at all and waited for him with anticipation. But our expectations were completely shattered. The new manager, Chris, being the first Harvard University graduate in the company, seems to be highly favored by our CEO, Kevin. Chris seems to be aware of Kevin's high expectations, and on his first day, he made a sudden declaration to us.
Now that I'm here in the sales department, I expect everyone to contribute even more to the company. Let's unite and work together to boost our company's performance.
Seeing a department manager still in his 30s, full of enthusiasm and energy, we welcomed Chris positively. We thought following Chris's lead would help the department and the company grow further, but it didn't take long to realize he had a problematic side. Chris looks down on subordinates with lower educational backgrounds. Perhaps it's because he worked hard to attain his high academic credentials, but only a few employees graduated from universities equivalent to or higher than Harvard University. Chris continued to treat subordinates differently based on their alma mater, causing a strained atmosphere in the sales department. Given that Chris doesn't even acknowledge graduates from non-Harvard universities, it's no surprise he targets someone like me who only has a high school diploma.
Alan, where have you been? You were slacking off because I wasn't around, right?
Despite being his subordinate, I'm older than him, but Chris always speaks to me in a condescending manner. He constantly accuses me of slacking off, which is far from the truth. I have never once slacked off or taken my job lightly. I would calmly correct him every time, but Chris's attitude never changed, leaving me puzzled by his behavior. I was at a meeting with a client. I'm now returning to my regular duties.
High school graduates are useless and defiant. If you have time to talk, get back to work.
The blatant harassment made me dread the job I once loved. Chris would make me prepare materials for the next day's meeting when I was about to leave or blame me for mistakes made by other employees. Even when I finally gathered the courage to talk to CEO Kevin, he wouldn't even look at me.
Chris is your supervisor. Follow his instructions. After all, Chris is an excellent employee with a Harvard University degree. Just do as he says.
He sided with Chris unconditionally. I wanted to argue, but I gritted my teeth and endured it. I realized that talking back wouldn't improve the situation. Every day was filled with such challenges, but I endured Chris's harsh treatment while feeling exhausted. Seeing that I didn't complain, Chris started dragging me around as his bag carrier. If this continues, I'll end up physically breaking down. I was at my wit's end, trying to find a solution. But then, things changed suddenly. That day, as usual, Chris took me along for client visits. On the way back from a client meeting, as we were walking by the station, I suddenly heard a heavy thud behind me. I turned around in surprise and saw a young woman lying on the road. She looked pale and was struggling to breathe. It seemed she suddenly felt unwell. Her eyes were closed and she was sweating profusely, clearly in distress. She might have hit her head when she fell because there appeared to be a wound on her forehead, so I quickly ran over and spoke to her. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?"
Yes.
After calling out to her a few times, she slowly lifted her face, but her large eyes blinked nervously. Her soft, feminine cheeks were now still pale. With her shoulder-length blonde hair swaying, she seemed to be trying to catch her breath for a while. I gently spoke to her to help her stay calm. "Take it easy. It doesn't look like your injuries are severe, but I'll call an ambulance just in case." I wondered if it would be better to get her a cold drink instead of waiting for an ambulance. As I was taking out my phone, an irritated voice came from above. I looked up in surprise to see Chris standing there with his arms crossed, glaring down at me. Oh no, I had completely forgotten about Chris. I was about to apologize, but Chris's angry voice cut me off.
What are you dawdling for? Get back to the office now. There's a mountain of work waiting.
"I'm sorry, Chris. I'm worried about this woman. Please just wait a few more minutes until the ambulance arrives." I pleaded with Chris, but his expression only grew more displeased. He spat out his words in disgust.
Is she your sister or something? No, right? Leave her. Our company pays your salary.
"I'll head back as soon as the ambulance arrives. I'll stay here alone, so please go ahead, Chris." I couldn't leave a woman who was injured and barely conscious just lying there. I offered to stay alone, but this seemed to anger Chris even more.
Are you kidding me? You're doing something unrelated to work for a stranger? If that's your attitude, do whatever you want.
With that, he turned his back and walked away. I thought he shouldn't speak like that in front of someone who was unwell, but fortunately or unfortunately, the woman still seemed dazed and barely conscious. Hoping she hadn't heard our exchange, I stayed with her until the paramedics arrived a few minutes later, then hurried back to the office. However, in those few minutes, Chris's anger seemed to have escalated. As soon as I stepped into the sales department, I was called out in a thunderous voice. Of course, it was Chris shouting.
So the slacker finally returns. Even after all that, you didn't follow me immediately. I see how seriously you take your job. Your work ethic is pathetic.
I am truly sorry for spending time on something unrelated to work, but someone was unwell. I couldn't just leave her. No matter how politely I explained, Chris's anger didn't subside. In contrary, the more I tried to explain, the angrier Chris seemed to get.
All you do is make excuses. I can't trust someone as careless as you with any job.
After declaring this, Chris stopped giving me work assignments from the next day. I was left wondering what to do at the office, but oddly enough, I felt a sense of relief. Since Chris had transferred, I hadn't been given any substantial work. Now that he was leaving me alone, I took the opportunity to work at my own pace like I used to. Then, to my delight, I got a chance to negotiate with a new company. It was a huge deal worth $2 million. The company, Montgomery Trading, a general trading company, reached out to me to explore the food sector. I wondered why they chose me, but I decided to make the most of this opportunity and prepared diligently. Chris must have seen how hard I was working, but strangely he didn't say anything. Given his past behavior, I expected him to make some snide remarks, try to change the person in charge, or interfere in some way. But Chris simply ignored my presence and acted as if I didn't exist. I felt uneasy about this, but it was better than being directly sabotaged, so I focused on my preparations for the deal. I worked hard, ready to give my all on the day of the business meeting. However, it was the calm before the storm, and Chris eventually caused a problem. One day, as I returned to the office, Chris suddenly confronted me and shouted. Chris suddenly got in my face and yelled loudly.
Oh, coming to work at this hour. Anyone late for a business meeting is fired.
With a nasty grin, Chris declared this and shoved me hard. I stumbled back a few steps, feeling a mix of panic and confusion. What do you mean, Chris?
The $2 million deal with Montgomery Trading should have started by now. What were you thinking, leaving the important documents behind?
I was shocked to find the documents for the Montgomery Trading deal, which had been on my desk yesterday, were gone. When I turned around, Chris was proudly holding the documents I had prepared, flaunting them.
It looks like you've caused the company a huge loss. This is why high school graduates are useless. As the sales manager, I'll go and apologize personally.
Wait, about that deal. I reached out to Chris in a panic, but he dodged my hand and looked down at me with a sneer.
I'll take over this deal from now on. Someone like you, who has no sense of responsibility and doesn't even feel remorse for being late, is fired.
After finishing his declaration, Chris gave me a triumphant look. I had been listening to him in silence, but finally got a chance to speak. What was Chris talking about? I stated the facts. The deal was finalized yesterday.
What?
The documents slipped from Chris's hands and scattered on the floor.
But these documents say the meeting is scheduled for today, starting in 15 minutes. Are you trying to deceive me?
No, the client Montgomery Trading requested an urgent reschedule to yesterday. Even after hearing my explanation, Chris didn't seem convinced and grew angrier, his face turning red.
If the date was changed, why didn't you update the documents? This is why you're hopeless.
The documents were for my personal use, so there's no need for the amendment. As the person in charge, I only needed to be aware of the date change. My response made Chris stomp his feet in anger, repeating his outrageous claim.
Anyway, you don't need to come to work anymore. You skip work under the pretext of helping people and fail to inform your supervisor of schedule changes. We don't need such an employee.
That being said, when I was told not to come to work, my mind went blank. I tried my best to get Chris to listen, but he kept forcing his opinion.
I've already told HR about your poor work attitude. Now I just need to tell the CEO directly to get you fired.
I've worked hard all this time, and what about the deal if I'm gone? I tried to argue, but Chris sneered and said triumphantly,
I'll handle the deal myself as your supervisor. Just pack your things and leave.
That's not. Normally, even a supervisor doesn't have the authority to fire me. But at that moment, I was too shocked about losing the negotiation I'd worked so hard on to think straight, and I was rushed out of the office by Chris. I stood on the street for a while, slowly beginning to understand the situation. Standing there wouldn't help, so I decided to head home and started walking slowly. When I finally reached the station, I heard a familiar voice and stopped.
Oh, is that you, Ellen?
You are. Your name is. Standing in front of me was the woman I had helped by the station that day. She smiled and thanked me again.
Thank you so much for that time. My name is Molly Montgomery. Thanks to you, I'm completely fine now.
No, I just did what anyone would do. As I answered, I was surprised to hear her name, Molly Montgomery, and I was at a loss for words. Because that name. Excuse me, but are you by any chance?
Yes.
Just as I was about to ask, my phone rang. Seeing it was from Seal Kevin, I felt a dark sense of dread, thinking the news of my firing had reached him. Reluctantly, I answered, and a frantic voice came through.
Alan, where are you? Can you come to my office right now?
I was just told by Chris that I was fired. I heard a gasp on the other end of the line. After a moment of muttering, "No way," and "unbelievable," Kevin spoke firmly.
Fired? I was told you chose to resign. Anyway, Montgomery Trading insists on speaking with you about the $2 million deal. Come to my office immediately.
As I stared at my phone in disbelief, Molly smiled at me.
I was just on my way to your company. Let's go together.
I blinked in surprise. Molly's last name is Montgomery, and the reason I'm being called back is because of Montgomery Trading. I looked at her in shock, and she smiled mischievously. Are you Molly from Montgomery Trading?
Yes. My father owns Montgomery Trading, and I'm the one in charge of this deal.
Montgomery Trading is so well known that even people uninterested in the economy have seen their TV commercials or magazine ads. I couldn't believe that Molly, the CEO's daughter of such a famous company, was the one I had helped. Still shocked, I managed to return to the company with Molly, where I had just been thrown out. When I entered the office, the receptionist, unaware of the situation, looked at me curiously. I had just left, so why was I back? She must be puzzled, but I merely nodded at her and continued on. In the CEO's office, I found a pale-faced Kevin and a scowling Chris. As soon as Chris saw me, he started yelling.
Alan, what sneaky trick did you use? Our client insisted that you be the representative.
A complaint? No, I didn't do anything. I hurriedly denied it, but Molly, who was beside me, stepped forward. Chris must have seen her when she collapsed, but he didn't seem to remember and glared at her suspiciously.
Who are you? What business do you have here? Only authorized personnel are allowed in.
It wasn't Molly who panicked at his words, but Kevin. Kevin hurriedly explained to Chris, trembling all the while.
Chris, apologize immediately. This is Molly Montgomery, the Vice President of Montgomery Trading. She came here for the business meeting.
Chris looked Molly up and down, still doubtful. That day, Molly was in a neat black suit, but her beauty made it look like a model shoot. Chris seemed to doubt that someone so stunning could be the VP of Montgomery Trading. Molly spoke calmly.
I'm here today as the representative for the deal. Chris, you don't seem to understand why I insisted Alan be the representative.
Exactly. I'm Alan's supervisor. Since Alan is leaving the company, I took over. Do you have a problem with that?
Chris's harsh voice shook the tense air in the office. Molly responded calmly to the glaring Chris.
It's because I trust Alan as a person. He helped me when I was in need. Thanks to him, I'm able to work today.
Startled by the sudden mention, I hastily responded. No, I didn't do anything special. I just happened to be there.
But if it weren't for Alan, I would have remained collapsed. He called the ambulance and got me to the hospital. It's all thanks to Alan.
Surprised by this unexpected development, Molly thanked me sincerely, saying, "Thank you so much." Then Kevin, still pale, explained the situation.
Actually, Montgomery Trading specifically requested that Alan be reinstated as the representative for this deal. But I was just told that Alan chose to resign and Chris took over, so I'm very confused.
Did I choose to resign? As I said earlier, Chris fired me. Hearing this, Chris glared at me as if to say, "Shut up." But under Kevin's stern gaze, Chris finally seemed to grasp his situation and started to tremble.
No, I didn't fire him. I was just warning Alan about his poorer work attitude.
What? That was a warning? But you clearly said I was fired, didn't you, Chris? I couldn't help but argue, and Chris yelled at me with his eyes wide open.
Shut up. You're not in a position to speak.
So, Chris, you always order your subordinates like that. You also told Alan to leave me when I collapsed.
Even though Molly seemed barely conscious at the time, it appeared she had heard our conversation. Chris flinched at Molly's sharp remark, but still tried to make excuses.
I apologize for that. I had urgent work at the office. But if I had known you were the VP of Montgomery Trading, I would have gladly helped.
That's why I don't trust you. Would you only help me because I'm the VP? That's why I chose Alan as the representative and rejected you, Chris.
As Molly calmly pointed out, Kevin turned red and began scolding Chris.
Chris, how could you change your attitude depending on the person? That's incredibly rude. No matter how impressive your educational background is, having someone like you as a subordinate is embarrassing.
Kevin said sternly, then turned to Molly for agreement. Trying desperately not to lose the big deal, he smiled ingratiatingly, obviously trying to gain favor. When I had consulted him about Chris, he had sided with Chris based solely on his education. Isn't Kevin changing his attitude depending on the person as well? I sighed lightly as I thought this. Meanwhile, Chris, who had been harshly criticized, stood silently, trembling slightly and staring at the floor. He couldn't believe that the deal was taken over by me, someone he had looked down on. Molly, the VP of Montgomery Trading, completely disliked him, and that Kevin, who had always supported him, was now harshly reprimanding him. Chris glared around the room, then said something outrageous.
Fine, I'll let Alan take this one. But it was I who nurtured Alan to be so highly valued by Montgomery Trading.
Chris's bizarre logic left us all speechless.
I trained him, so as his supervisor, I should be recognized too. Alan should show some gratitude and voluntarily step aside.
The tasks you gave me were just menial jobs unrelated to my duties. You never trusted me with real work because I only have a high school diploma. I couldn't help but retort, and Chris flew into a rage again, spitting as he confronted me.
People should work in positions suited to them. The world runs on mutual aid. It's because someone like you handles the menial tasks that someone like me, who is more competent, can thrive at work.
That's absurd. Chris continued to assert his righteousness, his chest puffed out with arrogance instead of showing any remorse.
I'm the company's ace, so it's only natural that inexperienced subordinates like Alan hand over their successes, especially with such a significant deal.
And as the company's ace, does that include proposing fraudulent transactions to our employees?
Molly's sudden statement brought a hush over the room. In stark contrast to the stunned Kevin and me, Chris, who had been so confident moments before, suddenly began to panic.
Fraudulent transactions? That's ridiculous. I would never. What proof do you have?
There's proof right here. One of our employees reported that Chris suggested inflating the bill for this deal.
Chris stopped dead in his tracks, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly. But Molly calmly spread out the documents in her hand and continued to explain to me and Kevin.
Chris suggested inflating the bill and splitting the extra profit between him and the employee. The inflated amount was supposed to be $200,000.
$200,000.
Kevin turned even paler at the staggering amount. Chris frantically looked between Kevin and Molly.
It's a misunderstanding. It was just a joke.
But Molly quietly took out her smartphone.
Our employee was so confused, they brought this evidence to me. Do you still claim it's a misunderstanding?
Molly's slender finger pressed play on a video, and Chris's smug voice immediately filled the room.
All you have to do is follow my lead. You'll make $100,000 just like that. It's a great deal, right?
On the square screen, there is an image that seems to have been secretly captured. In the video, Chris, sitting next to a suited man, was unmistakably grinning. He patted the troubled man's shoulder, persistently trying to convince him to agree to the inflated bill.
The employee recorded the video to prevent any trouble. Isn't this evidence enough?
This is all fake. The video must be doctored.
Chris started shouting, spitting as he spoke, but no one in the room believed him. His panic was the biggest proof of his guilt. In front of the stern faces of Molly and Kevin, Chris turned red and yelled,
Damn it. I'm an elite Harvard University graduate. Yet you choose this high school graduate over me and set me up?
Be quiet. Go home and wait for your disciplinary action against you. You'll likely be fired. Prepare yourself.
At the CEO's reprimand, security guards, alerted by the commotion, arrived and restrained Chris, who was still resisting. In the end, he was forcibly removed from the CEO's office. A subsequent internal investigation revealed that Chris had been forcibly taking credit for deals handled by his subordinates, falsely claiming them as his own achievements. In reality, he had hardly secured any contracts himself. Kevin, who had praised Chris as an elite since the company's inception, was now at a loss. After taking over clients' deals, Chris would often propose fraudulent transactions, as he did this time. All the fraudulent transactions he had carried out were thoroughly investigated. As a result, Chris found it difficult to stay in the company and decided to resign before he could be officially fired. After an urgent board meeting, it was decided to demand $4 million in damages from Chris. Chris was formally sued for $4 million in a civil lawsuit by the company. He found a new job in deep-sea fishing, working hard to pay off his debts. He reportedly spends nearly the entire year working on a ship, tirelessly working to save money and pay his dues. As for me, I received an apology from Kevin afterward. What Kevin told me was,
I'm sorry for not listening to you. I was completely deceived by Chris's claims of excellence. We are both victims here.
He maintained that he was also a victim. This convinced me to leave the company. Although I had been grateful for my time there, I couldn't follow the CEO with such an attitude.
Don't be foolish, reconsider. With your age and education, where else can you find a job? And what will happen to the $2 million deal with Montgomery Trading if you leave?
Don't worry, I've already secured my next job. As for the deal, Montgomery Trading will reconsider. With that, I left the company I had worked at for many years. My new job was with Montgomery Trading. After that day, Molly introduced me to her father, the CEO of Montgomery Trading, who took a liking to me and offered me a job. The deal I was supposed to handle was seamlessly transferred to me, now as an employee of Montgomery Trading.
It was indeed a remarkable connection.
All thanks to you, Molly, for believing in me. I expressed my deep thanks to Molly. Helping someone in need is natural, but how many people in this world are as genuinely grateful as Molly? When I expressed my sincere feelings, Molly smiled and took my hand.
I was simply returning the kindness you showed me. Let's continue to support each other both professionally and personally.
Yes, wait, both professionally and personally? Startled, my voice cracked, but Molly laughed and squeezed my hand. It seemed my happiness was just beginning.